Greetings once more, and welcome to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back in time and learn about another old CCG of back in the past that no longer exists? Yes, today I'm diving back into the history of CCGs once more, and we're going to be talking about Dark Force, a German-only CCG. Fascinating one that was originally released in '94. So if you're ready to head back into time, I'll open up a gateway through time and space to take us back to Germany, 1994. I'm your host and guide here, Dracovin. Take my hand, give me a little bit of tip, which means, making sure to subscribe over here, like and ring the bell, and of course, have you played Dark Forces? Or would you be interested in it if there was more than... I know there's an English translated for rules, for the cards if there were, would be interested in playing. Let me know. Alright, time portal's open, let's get rocking. We're back in Germany, 94! Boom! Are you ready to learn about Dark Forces? Great. Or sorry, Dark Force. I keep wanting to say Dark Forces and it's Dark Force. It's singular. Alrighty, Dark Force. What do we know about it? Well, it was a German-only collectible card game, and it was based on a German RPG that was out on the time, called, and I'm going to probably butcher this name, because I'm bad at pronouncing anything, even in English, let alone other languages, Das Schwarze Auge, DSA, which is also translated to The Dark Eye. So, it was based upon that, and Werner Fuchs was the project manager of development, along with a number of other people. The game was a two-player game, where you built it using... You could get Master and Power Packs. Master Packs, which were basically like a 60-card deck, and Power Packs, which had 16 cards in them each. You were using a multitude of special types of cards, terrains, armies, heroes, magical artifacts, creatures, spells, in order to battle it out with your opponent and eventually win the game. And you could always trade with cards. There were originally, like many early things, kind of in the rules, some kind of anti-systems, but by the time the game went out of stock, these rules went away. Let's talk about the overall history of the card game now, and understandably. So, yes, it was originally released in '94. You were two rival princes within a territory of the storyline. Basically, the Dark Times are in this land of Aventuria, and you're basically two members of small princedom basically vying for control over the overall continent. Cool. It had production of products up through '97 when Schmidt, Spiele, which we'll talk about, the company that was actually behind it, declared some bankruptcy, and eventually with the restructuring, everything that happened, this fell by the wayside. Over the history of it, they released basically two versions of the basic set, so multiple expansions of that, two expansions. It was 495 cards in 11 different categories, and there were actually 4 of those cards, just keep in mind, were promos. We'll talk about it. So there was 491 regular cards. Let's talk about Spiele just a little bit. So this is a company that was originally from 1905. So this is an old company, and one that has had a lot of material that they've published. So they're one that has a lot of history. And basically... the current version of Spiele is one that is merged with another company. So, the modern version of the company, as we would know it, moved to Eching, Bavaria in 1970. So this is, of course, 65 years after its origination. And to note, for Schmidt Spiele, if you want to know about them, games like Carcassonne, Stone Age, and plenty others, basically European-style games, are all under their purview of what they've put out. Granted, I can't tell you if they were the German-only version of them, off the top of my head, again, or these were the original purveyors of these. Actually, you'd think I would do that right then and there. Anyway, so there is Carcassonne had a lot of development over behind it, and basically Schmidt Spiele is just one of the groups behind the development of it, but it is in there. So they're a big tabletop people that you can see nowadays. Anyway, 97. Spiele went bankrupt. And basically, the company name and logo were bought by investor and publisher Blautz, and consolidated Blautz together with Spiele, and rather than being just Blautz and that, they basically converted themselves in this new combo to Schmidt. You got this logo. They used the older version of stuff like that. So this is a new, merged, reborn version of Spiele that came out of it, and unfortunately, Dark Force fell by the wayside during this entire thing. Let's talk about it. This is a master pack, a picture of one, so this is one of the 60 card packs. So yes, the packs that we had here were 2 editions of the main set, which was known as the Basic Collection. So there were 2 editions of that during the time period that were released, and of course then 2 expansions. In 1995, it was the first one, the Attack Pack. The Attack Pack didn't have any of the master packs. They were each in pack boosters. Hey, remember I mentioned those boosters, the power packs? Well, again, the Attack Pack came in power packs of 13 cards. The second and last expansion was Captain's Pack, which was released in 96, which also had 13 card packs. And a lot of new rules were established on that, and it had a big focus on naval warfare. When I talk about the rules today, I am not going to go into the depths about the Captain's Pack side of things, because I'm going to try to stick with the basic rules. But just know if you're using the Captain's Pack, there are additional rules that you would want to check out the English-only rules, the English version of the rules. Not only. English version of the rules to see about them. Again, you know, in the Board Game Geeks version of it, you can check out those rules. But, yeah. So, those were all the products that were released for this. Not a lot, but again, it got to that 491 cards in those core set and expansions and those 4 promo cards that were released. Alright, let's take a look at the cards. Understand what these cards are and what's on the cards. I wanted to talk about this here because I'm not going to talk about all the card types until I talk about the rules, but for now, I wanted to show off these cards and make you understand what they are. So in our top line, up in the corner, over here, is our card type. Yes. Unlike a lot of cards, which has in the upper left corner the name, it's the type. You know where the name is? In the middle, on the left side. So our terrain over there is stepping. The step. Yeah. Now, some cards will require terrain symbols. Those are going to be in the upper right corner. Those basically tell you when cards are connected with a terrain, when they can only be played on that certain terrain, when they can't be played on that terrain, they'll be red X'd if they cannot. We have the illustration in the middle, the text field towards the bottom, and then the only other thing that we really have to know about other than card type, card name, and basically if it can or cannot be used in conjunction with the terrain, is those 3 numbers at the bottom. You can see really them very well on the step card, the minus and pluses. This is combat strength for the first number, magic strength for the second, army, size, capacity, controllability, leadership for the last one. All, again, that last number depends on the card. So, okay. Let's talk about these numbers here. Combat strength, the first one. This is if it's a thing that can fight, it's just a number. If it's a modifier, like this terrain modifies combat, it's either a plus or minus with that number. Yeah. A single number can be basically used for attack and defense. In parentheses, it can only be used for passively or in defense. Yeah. That means, as you can see for combat, step is a -1 to defense. You get less defense there. Now there's also dashes, asterisk, and pound signs. Pound signs just means it's not used on that card at all. Asterisk means there's information in the text, and dash means no relevance on the game. Which is an odd thing that the dash and pound sign are separate, but I'm guessing depending on the card that comes up. Alright, so there you go. And first number, combat strength, that's how it works. Second value is magic strength. There's more to magic strength, we'll talk about it. But that can be used as casting spells or defense. And the last one is your number that's important. A kind of have to go into this, but that third number means if you're on a terrain, like with our step here, it's an 8. That's the capacity for what you can put there. How many armies may stay on that area. Armies, that number would be the army size. Oh, hey, I have an army of 5. It takes up 5 of my step. If I have an army of 1, it takes up 1 of my step. For heroes, it's leadership ability, how big an army they control. And so basically, each card, it has a different things. Also, there's creatures and summons, which have the level of controllability on there, too. Which is kind of like the leadership numbers. Anyway, those are the card types. I wanted to talk about them now, rather than the rules, even though I probably could have done them a little different. Anyway, here's one of the promo cards. As we said, there were 4 promo cards. You can check them all out. Well, you can check this out. Again, if you're trying for a complete collection, you can all 4. Anyway, let's get into those rules. Let's talk about how to play. We know what the game is. These 2 battle, these 2 princes, and inventory. But when you're using your game, you need every player needs a deck. And to win the game, you have to either conquer all your opponent's terrain cards, or have basically defeated a certain number of your opponent's forces. You will have a deck. Each player will. It has a maximum of 150 cards. Those 60 cards is the standard. So, kind of like with Magic, 60 cards is standard, but unlike Magic, which technically doesn't have an upper end, they just say how much you can shuffle. This one says there's a maximum of 150 cards. Certain types of cards can only have a certain number of copies. You can only have 2 of events, spells, summon creatures, and wonders, 5 of every other cards of every other card type, 10 of every terrain. Okay. Just to note, too, because I didn't talk about earlier, rarity. That's also a thing that you can kind of come in here. There's very common, common, rarely, and very rare. Very common, you'd assume that you'd have a large number in each pack. Common, an average number in each pack. Rarely, a small number in each pack. And very rare, a maximum of 1 per pack. And we're talking about our 16-card packs. And again, card type actually does affect rarity in a lot of ways, because there's certain rarities within categories that can kind of things. Certain things, like there might be one type of card where more of the cards in that type are rare. So you're probably going to find cards of another type more often. Okay. Alright. Let's take a look at the play area. Here, a sample play area. Now, your hand, your deck, your balance, Boron's Hall, and discard pile are all on your side. That play area is shared. That's something that you can't tell with this picture here, but it is shared. Some of your terrains are facing with your way up, and your opponent's terrains, mixed in there, are facing their way up. There are also colors matching things. Terrains are brown. Terrain expansions are also brown. Units are green. Equipment's blue. Heroes, armies, and creatures are also part of the green. Spells are red. Miracles are purple. Events are blue. Just like equipment, events are. In the play area, you're going to be putting terrain cards down. You can place terrain expansions there, equipment, units there. And again, all that green cards can kind of be put onto a stack under the terrain. You will be stacking things under terrains. These spells, miracles, and events are not put on terrains normally unless they specifically say to, and they'll define how they're played. So there are 2 discard piles. Your deck and the Boron's Hall and the discard pile. Why is this important? The Boron's Hall is your discard for characters, where heroes, armies, and creatures go to. That's important. It's basically you have to keep it separate. All the other cards, spells, events, and actually summon creatures end up in the discard pile. So creatures, but not summon creatures. Heroes, armies, and creatures end up in Boron's Hall. You will need a d6. Keep that in mind. You will need a d6. Basically, everybody takes a turn. Turns have phases. We'll talk about the phases. You draw cards from your deck at the start of your phase, lay out new terrains and move during movement phase, resolve battles during combat, and then discard excess cards in a discard phase. When you complete your turn, it goes to the other player's turn, and that's a game round, and both of you take a turn. Cool. You now know the basics. Here's another thing of that card type I was talking about. Let's talk about the types of cards. Terrain. It's just that. It's used to regulate terrain there. It has information that tells you how it affects battles on there, whether it gives bonuses to attack, to magic, and how many creatures can be on it. There are some special terrains from the Captain's Pack, just to know that. Terrain expansions can be played on a terrain. You play it face up on a terrain during the movement phase. They cannot be moved after they're played, and if someone conquers the terrain, they can control the expansion. Only one expansion of a type, basically a name, can be played on a single terrain. Basically, that means if you have two expansions of the same name in your hand, you can only play one on any one terrain. If you have two castles, you can only play one castle on your terrain. Remember what I said, that you can have only 2 copies of events, spells, summon creatures, and wonders, but 5 copies of everything else. Meaning I could have 5 castles in my deck. I have to play it on 5 different terrains, but it is also important to note you can play multiple terrain enhancements on a terrain. That doesn't matter. You can have a castle and a river on there. You can have any number of expansions. You can just have only one of each type of expansion. And those expansions will add to the numbers of the terrain. Will affect its defensive abilities, its magical strength, or its capacity. Of course, then you have creatures. They're green. These are the 2 brown cards. They're wild animals that are played during a movement phase. They're placed on terrain. They may only move if led by a hero. And they are limited by the terrain's capacity. So they are added together, and if they're destroyed, go to Baron's Hall. Sent to wander them. Halls of the Dead. They've got the 3 stats. And the last one's control them. Armies, your basic troops. You have to think of them as war bands, about 10 to 20 combatants. They're not huge armies. They're units in your armies, basically, that you're putting together. You put them under a terrain during your movement phase, and they're played face down. Just like the creatures are played face down. So keep this in mind. A lot of things in this game are played face down. Creatures, armies, equipment, hero. I think heroes technically do show them before you put them face down. But again, in this case, creatures and armies, placed face down under the terrain. Granted, if your opponent interacts with it, they will know what's in there. So you really can't hide the cheating fact. Like, if you go to battle someone, stuff will be revealed. They will know your limit in there. They will know your numbers. Again, it is hidden ahead of time, but it is revealed during the game. Kind of like face-down cards and other tabletop games. They do exist. And the heroes are played from the hand. They are showed to an opponent before they're played face-down. So you do reveal a hero. Unlike the armies or creatures, which are just placed face-down, a hero is revealed. So also keep that in mind. You will show that off, and then you will place it under a terrain. Heroes may move armies and creatures. They can support armies in combat. And they're also sent to Baron's Halls if they're defeated. And armies may only move when led by a hero. Similar to creatures can only move when controlled by a hero. Equipment is a blue type of card. They're weapons and armor that are used. You put it on the terrain. Basically, if you place an equipment on terrain and that terrain is conquered, and that equipment was never put on there was no defenses put there, like you put it ahead of time, then that is taken by the opponent to be used during this game. But during combat, the equipment can then be used. And if a unit that is using an equipment is defeated, it gets discarded then too. Otherwise, it's left behind. So if I had that equipment and I did not use it with any of the units I was using to defend this terrain, and they were all defeated, it would be left behind. There's a little bit more details to that. Yeah. Events are blue. They change the course of the game. The card text tells you when you can play the event, in what part of the round, play the event, and here's an important part about events. And this is again from the latest version of the rules. You can only play the same event card once per turn. 2 events of the same name may not be played on the same turn. You can play 2 different events, but, like, Succession is an event. You can't play 2 of this card, Succession, in the same turn. You can play Succession in a different event. There are spells, which are red. They're magical incantations. They have a strength on them. They strengthen units, weaken opponents. Basically, they can only be played from a spellcaster, a unit with a magic strength, not in brackets. And they can only play a spell that is equal to or lower than their magical strength. So if they have a magic strength of 5 on their card, so basically number, maybe not number, 5, and then let's say 3 to control, or to place on a terrain, that 5 tells me I can play a spell of 5 or less from my hand. If I have a spell of 6, I can't play it. There are also certain things like summon creatures, which are also red, like spells, which also require you to have a spellcaster. Basically, different types of summon creatures require certain types of summoners, basically certain types of spellcasters. They're matched to them. As an example, the undead may only be summoned by black mages. Okay, so you have to have a black mage to summon undead as a summoned creature. They have they function like ordinary creatures then, but it tells you how long they last, when they last, the strength they have to control. And the strength that they have on their spell number also tells you like how easy it is or difficult to summon. There are purple cards called miracles. Here's an interesting one. I'm not going to go into full detail about it, but basically, long story short, there are higher powers at work. Miracles. You can play these miracle cards if you have a blessed hero, a blessed one hero. There's a specific type of hero that can match a miracle card. Basically, a blessed one works the miracle of their own god. So basically, if they're a blessed one of God A, one of the 12 gods of Virion, then you can play God A's miracle for free. If you play one from a different god, you have to roll a die. And your opponent rolls a die. And it succeeds if your die roll, D6, exceeds their... equals or exceeds their opponent's. So you both roll D6s, and you at least have to meet your opponent, if not exceed them, to play a miracle that's not from your blessed hero's god. And again, you can play any of those miracles, so you could have multiple blessed heroes from different gods in your deck, and miracles matching each of them, but again, it's a chance that one that doesn't match your hero doesn't work. So keep that in mind. And the Captain's Pack has some special types of cards. It's got fleets, and ocean hazards, and ships, and stuff like that. So I'm not going to get into it, because Captain's Pack is an expansion. It only adds rules when you're using the Captain's Pack. If not, it doesn't matter. Let's talk turns. And there's going to be setting up for gameplay. I'll explain these examples in a second. So again, each player sits across from each other, shuffles their own decks. You can offer to cut. You draw 6 cards. That's your opening hand. You roll a die. Roll higher goes first. On a die, you re-roll. Pretty simple there on that one. You take your turns, complete a round, go through your 4 phases, go to the other player, they go through the 4 phases. That's a complete round. So, at the start phase, your first phase, you have 2 actions on that turn that you can either use to draw cards or move units. So your first 2 turns are pretty important this way, because it determines a lot of stuff. So, at the beginning of your start phase, you say either you will draw 2 cards, 1 card, or 0 cards. Completely up to you. You then draw that number of cards from your deck. Every card that you don't draw, you can make 1 move during the movement phase. So you have to choose between movement phase and card draw. Movement phase can equal attacking, so you have to kind of balance out card draw and when you're still building your forces and sending them out. Yeah. So if you don't draw any cards, you can make 2 moves. Draw 1, make 1 move. Draw 2 cards, no moves. There is a rule, and this is an interesting one, because only once during the entire game, you can discard your entire hand to your discard pile and draw a new hand of cards. 1 for each card discarded. You can take a mulligan, and it's at any time during the game, but once per game. That doesn't say the start of the game. That's an interesting rule for mulligans. Normally it's at the start of the game, and I find that one fascinating. Your movement phase. Let's talk about that one here. Alright, this is bringing new cards from your play into hand, moving units from one terrain to another. Basically, there's some sub-phases for movement phase. Playing new terrains, declaring moves, executing moves, movement ends. So, anyway. New terrain cards, if any, must be played first. Active player may bring other types of cards into play any time during the movement phase. So, you play your new terrains first, and then you can, anytime during your movement, play your army, your creatures, your heroes, your armies, all those things, put your equipment down. Doing any of these things. Before, after moves, just before the end of your movement phase. Units and equipment are normally placed face down on the stack of a terrain. Terrain expansions are played face up on top of them. And an active player may look at one of their own stacks at any time during this phase. But keep in mind, you can expect these, you're not allowed to make notes. You have to remember what you played in a place. You can check them during your turn. Well, the active player may look at their own stacks hidden on terrains they control, basically. Face-up cards can be looked at by both players. And you may not write down about it. You are supposed to remember what you have played. You have to kind of keep an eye. This is part of the strategy, keeping an eye on them. Let's talk about terrain placement here. Because we can talk about the original terrain placement, moving into how terrain placement continues. Alright. The active player puts new terrain into play, and there's certain guidelines. Terrain must be played so the upper edge of the card faces the opponent. Basically, it's upright towards your opponent. Upright towards you, so you're looking at the card as if it's in front of you. You're playing it in front of you. Terrain has to be adjacent to terrain cards in play, and as many as possible. New terrain must be adjacent to at least one other terrain controlled by the active player. See the diagrams. The first two terrain cards played must be adjacent along upper edges of the cards. The next terrain to be played must be placed on an offset manner. Look at the thing over here. A player must have at least one terrain card in play before they may play any other spells or events. So, yep. And keep in mind, at the beginning of the game, basically, you have to make sure that there are some terrains out. Part of the setup. Yep. So, effectively, you play your... You get those first two out, basically, is what it is. So, keep that in mind. Yeah. Okay. The active player in the second phase, part of this phase. So we've set up our terrains. Active player says which units are moving and to where. And point to an appropriate terrain and announcing they will move here. You can't reverse this decision. If it's possible from that terrain, it must be carried out. Otherwise, it's forfeit. So basically, if I tell a group to move from one place to another, it has to be legal. Heroes may move on their own. Armies and creatures need to be led by a hero who have a high enough leadership score. Equipment may be carried by heroes or armies that use them. Each unit may only move once. If the player has two moves, they must split between two different stacks. There are special exceptions to this from card effects. It is entirely possible to make two movements onto different terrains from the same terrain by leading with two different heroes, though, too. So, if I have a stack under here and two different heroes, I can split it. Flying units may move up to 3 terrains in one move. So keep that in mind. I do feel like there's got to be some revealing, but they don't talk about it in the rules, but I feel like, to reveal these things. The moves are moved. Anyway, so the active player takes the face-down cards out from under the plane and declared what move would happen. Take the cards that would move together and place them in the adjacent terrains. Planes and roads give movement advantages to players, etc. At the end of the movement, Okay, moving unit terrain has the following effect. If a player moves a stack to a terrain they control, the units are immediately placed face down on the terrain, joining the stack there. Check the terrain for capacity restrictions. Important. Remember capacity. And if you are over capacity, things end up dying. It's terrible. When the player moves a stack into it, so capacity is very important. I didn't dive into capacity fully, but yeah, capacity is very important. If you exceed the terrain at any time, the opponent may destroy units and send them to Bannon's halls until the capacity is no longer exceeded. And they don't know what the units are, so they're probably going to choose random. And they may choose anything, and it might be the card you want, or it might be a weaker one. So don't go over capacity. If you move in a stack with an enemy-controlled terrain with an army led by a hero, but there are no enemy units to oppose them, you capture the terrain and... So if you move a stack into an enemy-controlled terrain with an army led by a hero, again, because you have to have it, you can't just send a hero. It has to be an army. And there are no enemies there, you capture that terrain. And any expansions and any equipment on it. Basically, you rotate the terrain so it's facing you now. So basically, magic card open. I don't have it all in the way. I've got some other random... I have a Star Trek Adventures card. So basically, like, you know, you've got your card up. It was like this for your opponent towards you. You flip it. You know, you took control of it. Star Trek up here. Yes. You do, again, check the capacity restrictions, and, yeah. And capture cards are returned to their owner once the end of the game happens. So if you capture equipment, they get it, the other person gets it. They own that card. If it goes to an enemy-controlled terrain, and there are enemy units, you get combat in the next phase. If you enter an enemy-controlled terrain with only heroes or creatures, and there are no enemy units, and if only the heroes or creatures are left in enemy terrain after combat, the units remain face-up in the terrain, basically. Units fail to conquer the terrain without an army. That means that, basically, if you can't get rid of the heroes and creatures, the opponent still controls the terrain and may recruit units, and then, after they do, the combat ensues. So if you manage to defeat their armies, but don't defeat them fully, then yeah, you have to do that. Basically, if only heroes or creatures are left over, you have to recruit. Alright. Let's get into combat. Let's get into the combat here. To begin. Yep. Okay. This is going to be one that's going to be very interesting. So, anyway. Okay. So, combat. It's this. Combat is renowned in combat rounds. So combats can be big. These can be almost their own sub-games. So you have to think of it that way. When you have combat ensue, it is almost a sub-game. You're setting up for a victory like this. And it's important to think about that. If several combats break out after the movement phase, like you move twice and have 2 combats, whoever's active decides the order of the combats. The owner of terrain, where the combat occurs, is the defender for the combat. The other player is the attacker. So until that combat ends, we know who's the defender, we know who's the attacker. You set your hand aside. Each of you picks up the stack that's under the terrain, our hidden stack. And you make sure to keep them separate from your hand. We have our combat rounds. Place units, announce if you tend to retreat, exchange attacks, retreat, reorganize. Combat over is one player has units left on the battlefield. The battlefield is the open space of play, separate from terrains. So basically, once only one person has stuff left, they win. So first off, we place units. The defender starts by placing 1 unit face-up on the battlefield. This is their front row. The attacker then places 1 unit opposite the first. These are the 2 initial front row characters. Units then may be placed in 2 battle lines on each side. Units in the front row are in close combat and may attack directly. Units in the back are not in close combat, can use ranged combat, special flank attacks, magic, or flying attacks. Heroes are placed in the back row and support their armies in close combat. Equipment is placed under a unit. There you go. So, anyway, before a unit is placed in a back row, at least one unit must be in a front row. So you have to set up your front row before you can start building your back row. Equipment cards are placed with a unit. They are kept hidden, placed face down under the equipped unit. They do not be revealed until the equipment unit is attacked or is attacks or is attacked. So basically, you stick equipment under until someone attacks or is attacked. You don't reveal that equipment. The defender then... So we got our first 2 units down. Then the defender places 2 units in the battlefield using the same guidelines, meaning that they have to at least one in the front before they can place in the back. And after the defender places 2 more units, it's followed by 2 units from the attacker, and back and forth until all units are played. So defender has the first initial play, then attacker, then it goes back and forth, defender 2, attacker 2. Once you've placed all your units, you have your heroes in the back row, your equipment under things. That's when you pick up your hands. Hey, you're ready to start combat. Both players may assign secret spells to their units. We'll talk about spellcasting. Finally, the terrain card and the terrain expansion are placed next to this battlefield because you have to see where the modifiers are. Whether there's defensive modifiers, attacking modifiers, that kind of thing. Alright, that's the first part. We've organized our first war battle now. Now the intent to retreat. What the hell does this mean? The attacker announces if any of their heroes or armies want to withdraw from the combat. Creatures and summoned creatures can never retreat. They always fight to the bitter end. So this is basically, after everything's placed, you can try to retreat. You could see, oh, heck, I'm in a bad position. I want to retreat. The attacker gets that option. So front row units that wish to retreat may not attack in a combat round, though they may defend themselves. Units in the back row may attempt to retreat, may still support, cast spells, or make ranged attacks. So basically, if you're a hero that's attempting to retreat, you can still give that support to the front. So that's the entire thing. You're talking about retreating and who wants to retreat. Then you exchange attacks. This is the actual fight. You cast spells, do ranged attacks, do flying attacks, do close combat, and flank attacks. In that order. They are individual phases, like these individual sub-phases, so a sub-phase and a sub-phase, are carried out things. So first of all, you cast spells. The spellcasters on both sides of the combat can cast spells. Each spellcaster may only cast 1 spell or 1 summoned creature per combat phase. So keep that in mind. So if I have 2 spellcasters, each one can cast a spell or summon a creature. You place the spell or summon creature face down on them, flip them over at the same time. They're cast in order of magic strength from least to highest, so magic strength 1 spells take effect first, then 2, then 3, and so on and so forth. If they're tied, we'll die to see goes first. They take place immediately. Physical attack spells are carried at the same time. If a unit is destroyed by spells, are both destroyed. Basically, if your defender casts a spell and the attacker casts a spell and they both destroy units, they both go to war on assault at the same time. So yeah, attack spells carried off. Again, you do order of strength. Spells, they take effect immediately. So if 2 people are doing... So basically, if I'm doing a much more powerful, slower spell, I might get killed first. If the spellcaster is destroyed before the spell takes effect, i.e. your 1-rank spell killed me before my 3-rank spell comes off, I get it back in my hand. I didn't reveal it, but I get it back. Units that may cast spells and make ranged attacks must do one or the other. You can't do both. Range attacks. So now that we've done our spells, defender first announces any ranged attacks, basically, and that they will make in which enemy unit they target. Then the attacker does the same. The ranged attacks on both sides are conducted simultaneously. So the attacker saying, I'm range attacking these guys. The defender says that, the attacker says that. You roll them all simultaneously. So technically, they're taking place at the same time. Ranged attackers may shoot over 1 row. whether it's friendly or enemy. So if you have basically front row ranged attacker who's not engaged in close combat, they could attack the back row. If you have a back row ranged attacker, they can only attack the front row. So you can only shoot over one row. For a ranged attack, both sides roll a die. The attack unit adds its ranged combat strength. The defender adds its combat defense roll. You compare the two die. If the attacker is equal to or higher, if the attack roll is higher than the defending total, they're destroyed. So, a attacker has to exceed the defender's roll in this case. This is not a tie. We talk about ties. This is one of those ones you've got to exceed on your attack. And again, since these are simultaneous, two ranged attackers could shoot each other and kill each other. Flying attacks. That's our next one here. If a unit is flying, it can target anybody. It can target an enemy in any row or position. And it basically functions a lot like close combat. So, that's it. Flying units can just... It goes to close combat, but they can target anybody. They don't have to be right in front of them or adjacent to them. So, in the front row, you're engaged in close combat attacks. If units in the front row on both sides engage each other. Each unit attacks an enemy unit directly in front of you. If there's no unit directly in front of you, a unit must attack an enemy diagonal opposite you in the front row. It has to touch a corner. Ranged attacks and flank attacks are the exceptions to this. So again, like, if you look on this example over here in that 4-unit front row, that second one over that doesn't have someone in front of them, they can close combat their diagonals, or if they've arranged, they can range the back row. They have that option there. They can also do a flank attack. We'll talk about that. This is complex. I know. It's a thing. It's interesting. It's a thing. Anyway, you declare who you're attacking. If the front row unit is not adjacent to any enemy, and is not the target of a flying attack, you can make a flank attack. Basically, if you're off to the side, basically if on that secondary front row, on the one below there, if that middle one, if those two in the front row, one was over, so that guy all the way over at the end was just hanging and hadn't had anybody nearby, they can make a flank. It can happen that several units can target the same unit. The die roll the same die roll is used for the unit's defense in all its combats, but the attacks are resolved individually. So if, let's say, two of the ones on here want to attack the guy that's got the equipment right in the corner, in front of them, both target them, that front one with the equipment would get one defense roll, but both of them would get an attack roll against them. Anyway, if it's higher than the defense roll, it destroys it. If the attack roll is. If it's equal to or less than the defense roll, target's unaffected. Pretty simple like that. Since units in combat pairings attack each other, it is possible for two enemy units to send each other to Moron's Halls. Wait, that confuses me. Sorry, there's an important time where it's sort of like... Anyway, less the defense roll, the target's unaffected. Since units in a combat pairing attack each other, it's possible for two enemy units to send each other to Moron's Halls. That one I don't understand. Sorry, this is things that might be like translations. Anyway, let's talk about flank attack. I'm doing my best here. It's a little confusing. Flank attack is basically if there's no one defending against you and you're in close combat, you can flank a back of your choice. Basically, go around, flank the back. It becomes a close combat, and no other units can intervene in that one. And it's just close combat rolls that they could go after one of the ones in the back. Heroes support the people in front of them. As long as a hero is in the back row and behind an army unit and is not the target of a flank or flying attack, the hero can add its combat strength to the attacker, to an attacker's attack roll. A hero does not affect an army in defense. So keep in mind, for a hero, it doesn't affect defense, but it affects attack. Don't add the bonuses to a hero's equipment when supported. That's its own stuff. Anyway, let's talk about retreat and reorganize. So, surviving units that announce an intent to retreat may now withdraw from combat into terrain controlled by the retreating player that is adjacent and is uncontested. If it's not possible to retreat, you go to Barnes Hall. An army does not require a leader to retreat. Yeah. Effectively, again, anybody can retreat. First, the attacker announces that any units or armies with withdraw from combat before defending. Reorganize. After the round is complete, players set their hands aside again. Because remember, you can play cards from your hand, possibly. Each player picks their surviving combat units and equipment back in their hand, and a new round is played. Equipment may be equipped to different units in different combat rounds. Combat is over when one side or the other has no units on the terrain. If the attacker survives the combat with one or more armies, they've conquered the terrain. And you flip it around. If the attacker survives with only heroes and creatures, they're placed face up on the contested terrain. The attacker takes control of any equipment on the terrain that was not used in combat, but doesn't conquer the terrain or its advantages. The attacker ignores the terrain capacity during the duration of combat. They must basically adjust it once they've gained control. Uncontested terrains that the attacker controls. They basically have to distribute excess units to adjacent uncontested terrains or send them to Barnes Halls if they can't. So basically, if I send in a really big army that I had bigger capacity in my terrain than the opponent's, yes, I may conquer it very easily. If I either have to send people back or if I can't, they die. And there's the basics of combat. Let's talk about the rest of the rules. Discard phase. If you put 6 cards in the hand at the end of your turn, you discard excess. Pretty simple. And then go to the opponent's turn. Spell casting. So, talk about the magic strength. And this has to be a magic strength, not in parentheses. If it's in parentheses, it's just for defense only. There's mages, druids, witches, warlocks, all kinds of spellcasters that they use the spells. There are different kinds of spells. Instantaneous, combat, game round, permanent, secret. Each of them has different rules. Instantaneous cards take effect immediately. Combat remain in play until the end of the current fight after being discarded. Game round lasts for a turn. Permanent remain in play until they're removed by a counterspell or miracle. Secret spells may be played during combat but aren't immediately revealed to the opponent. After setting up all units involved in a combat round, players may announce that spellcaster in combat is casting a secret spell on a valid target, stating Spellcaster X enchants card Y. Player then places the spell face down under the enchanted card. The spell card is revealed as soon as the enchanted unit's attack or is attacked. Whew. Spells target opponent's card. In order for the spell to be effective, they must overcome magic resistance. It is rolled as an attack based on the spell's power versus the defender's magic defense. So if I'm attacking with a spell 3, even if my mage is a 5 for magic strength, we're using the 3. So it's got to be the magic spell versus defenders. Summon creatures. Let's talk about them just a little bit. You can only summon stuff of your strength or less for a summoner. If you try to summon something more powerful than that, they immediately kill the summoner and disappear. The creature goes to the discard pile. But again, like, there might be reason for card combos to have a summoner get killed by his summon, so you can try to summon a higher one. It'll kill it. The summon creature's then strength and magic strength is not modified by the spells. It can be modified by spells, but basically the base stats are out. Different summons have different rules, like demons go away at the end of the round. You have to roll a die to see if a Jin keeps around or its magic strength goes away. I'm not going to dive deeper into miracles and the 12 gods. We talked about the basics of them. Let's talk about winning to finish up today. I hope you understand the rules. If you have extra questions, ask me below, or I will basically link the I'll make sure to put the link of the Board Game Geek, and you can see in the files there is the English translation. So that's what you can do. Alright. There are 3 ways to win. 1. You send enough units to Boron's Halls. I want to say Baron's Halls was Boron's Halls. 2. You conquer all opposing players' terrain. Or 3. One player's deck is defeated. Keep in mind, you're only drawing them as 2 cards per turn. All your cards are terrains. You might not draw terrains. You might run out if they're conquered. So conquering all those opposing terrains could happen. So, the first one though, let's talk about that. Sending units to Boron's Halls. The game ends as soon as one player has 20 or more points in Boron's Halls, and there's at least 5-point difference between the 2 players. The winning with the fewer points in Boron's Halls. So, that's why you have a separate place for your armies, creatures, and heroes. Those values on them, the values of armies, values of creatures, the strength, the leadership of heroes, is their point value. You add all those together, and if my value in my Boron's Hall is over 20, and 5 more than yours, you've won. So, if that third value on each of the cards in Boron's Hall, you add it together, that's the sum. You have to pay attention to that. Someone's above 20. As soon as there's 5 or more difference, you got it. Now that 20-point limit is a guideline. You can do different point values depending on your game. It's okay to customize it. They basically say if you have a 60-card deck, they recommend a 20-point, a 90-card deck, a 30-point, and a 120-card deck, 40 points. And you may look through an opponent's Boron's Halls at any time, similar to yours, so you can see how many points everybody has. So you're like, can I see how many points you have? You know, can I see your Boron's Hall? You're allowed to see that. If you conquer all the opponent's terrain, also game over. Or again, if the deck is depleted, you can no longer draw cards, you lose the game. That's a pretty long game. It's possible. But yeah. But, there you go, there's Dark Force. Again, I try my best to go over everything, especially about the rules, and we know the rules. It's an interesting game, I'm not gonna lie. I think there's a lot of complexity to it, which kind of throws me off about wanting to necessarily play it more often than maybe trying it out once. But again, as an English speaker that has a little bit of knowledge of German, I'd have to find English translated versions of the cards. Finding the rules was easy, but, you know, again, and I didn't even get into the captain's entire thing, the naval stuff, because there's an extra level of rules on top of everything. I didn't even get into that. Oh god, that would have been an extra thing. And again, if you have any questions about the rules, I can chat about them. You can check it out in your own thing of the rules. It's interesting. I feel like the hidden card aspect of it is a fascinating thing, but you do reveal those cards a lot of times, so they're not hidden for long. They're like, you set up armies, and you do have to keep track of them. Because if, like, it's pointed out, you made a mistake by your opponent, when you get into things like combat, well, they get rid of your stuff of their choice. Again, if you make a mistake and have too many points somewhere, your opponents remove stuff, not you. So that's kind of what keeps you from, like, cheating, honestly, with hidden cards. Again, like, it's one of those things that makes it very interesting, the hidden card mechanic. And combat's a mess. Combat's fascinating, but it is a mess, and it does tell me that, honestly speaking, unless there's bad games where you're not getting terrains, more than likely the points in your Boron's Hall is the more likely way to win. But again, yeah. Most tournaments also put an hour time limit, that after an hour goes by, whoever has the least points in Boron's Hall wins, basically current value that way. So that's another way that you can kind of, like, keep a time limit to this if you have big games. But I would enjoy diving into this interesting German-only CCG. It's part of the history of CCGs that came out there, and certainly you can feel about, it's a very 94 CCG, and there weren't just ones in America. I'll try my best to get into a lot of the international ones. I might miss a few here and there. There are a lot, but we'll play it by ear, you know, there too. I can only do so much research to find someone, so I hope you enjoyed diving into this one. And, you know, maybe learn German and play some Dark Forces. Anyway, Dark Force. God, I'm trying to say Dark Forces. I hope you enjoyed today. please check out the rest of my stuff, whether it's joining me live here on Twitch or over on my YouTube side of things. On Twitch here, I do recordings like this. I do live plays like Fall of Avonswell, Wednesdays at 8. That's my current Pathfinder 2nd Edition game. I've got Discussing Tabletop Saturdays at 6. Always good. My kind of podcast-y discussion show. Talk about news of the week, deeper discussion of tabletop. And I do some gaming. You can always check out my YouTube side thing. All my tabletop stuff gets uploaded there. Eventually, I'll probably have a VOD channel for non-tabletop stuff. But for now, if you just want to see tabletop stuff, YouTube's the way to go. And just do remember the YouTube stuff. Definitely keep subscribing. And let me know what you think about Dark Force in the comments below. I also do check out my social media down below for all my keeping up to date with stuff. And anyway, until the next time, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.